New perception.
All right.
That's right.
So here we go, live on YouTube. And Dove, Sharon, and Lorri, happy Thankful Thursday. Good to have you here on ACIM, Gather for A Course in Miracles. And there you go.
Okay, thank you, Lynn, and hello, Lynn and Sharon and Dove and anyone else who's in the Pal Talk room, which I can't see right now. We're on lesson 313. Now let a new perception come to me. We are working with Ken Wapnick's journey through the workbook. Ken opens this lesson with a commentary. This is another important lesson which follows the two preceding ones. Recall that we begin with a negative judgment about ourselves, which leads us to make up a negative world perceived outside ourselves. We eventually realize there must be another way because ours is making us too unhappy. Go figure, right? Pretty much everyone who comes to the course has been disillusioned by the world. Thanks, Lynn, for putting the Pal Talk room on the board. And I'll say hi to Christopher and Delia and Mikey and Zulma in the room. We thus pray, now let a new perception come to me. This is not meant to invoke a magical perception that comes to us, for we come to it. The source of this new perception, Christ's vision, is our right minds. We are the ones who wandered away by choosing against it. Therefore, we are the ones who must return and choose again. Those two last lines were very important to me when I finally understood them. We are the ones who wandered away by choosing against God. Therefore, we are the ones who must return and choose again. For many years, I kept saying, how come God can't just take away my ego? And I don't even say my ego anymore, but I used to just be so upset. Like, how come God can't just wipe all this away? How come God can't, just even take this body, wake me up, help me out here? I was so frustrated and upset. And I actually had a friend tell me this, that you're the only one who chose this, and you're the only one who can unchoose it or choose again, choose for truth. And he told me that years before I ever got it. So I railed and yelled and hollered about being a victim, basically, for years before it one day dawned on me, oh, I'm choosing all of this. And even as we go further into the course, we've been studying it for decades, we will have other areas of our lives that have been completely blocked to our awareness in terms of how we are choosing to be a victim. And we don't even know it, because if you recall, about 2 months or so ago, Dove had this major revelation about, oh my gosh, I chose all that. I chose it. And I have that frequently too with different areas of my life. So some areas don't even come up anymore. And I think it was, with you, Sharon, or somebody, where I said someone asked me about my mother or something. So, my mom left our family for 7 years. And before she left, she choked me and said she was going to kill me. And she stole all my clothes and then burned them and then sent them back, like burned and waterlogged, dropped them in our yard and went off with this crazy man who showed me a gun and said he was going to kill my dad. And it was like, oh, they said, really? That happened to you? I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess it did, like 40 some years ago. But it's gone. It's like, I never even think about that anymore. And it's like, oh, yeah, that happened. Because I don't carry any victimhood around that. Basically, it's just like, oh, yeah, that was one of those stories in the life. But the areas that we still talk about, those are probably the areas where we're still carrying some sense of victimhood because they still bother us. And when we completely and totally say, I am choosing this, not in the sense of blaming ourselves for what happens to us, like if we get cancer or if we have a tragedy in our lives, because that's the ego script. But the Course says in chapter 21, section 2, responsibility for sight, which I think is absolutely the one of the most important things for us to get and to apply. I am responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I would experience, and I decide upon the goal that I would achieve. And everything that seems to happen to me because it's a dream, seems. I ask for and receive as I have asked. So what we're doing is, I want to be this dream character. I want to be this seeming person who is experiencing all this stuff. And I noticed it the other day when I was listening to a novel. And in the novel, someone had died. And the one person had to go and tell the mother that her child had died. And I'm listening to this and feeling all the feelings and just going, oh my God, that's so awful. And in the middle of that, I caught that I actually liked it. I liked it. And it was like, oh my gosh, I want death. I want death. I want pain. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to either you, Dove, or Sharon, whichever one.
I'm going to take that, Laura, because I really believe what you just said is helpful. When you say you saw the ego at work, that's what I have seen now, that so much has moved out of the way, all these obstacles of concepts that are, pretty much like crowding us, not being able to see. We can't have vision when we're covered with thought. And I feel like how interesting it is when we can't take that responsibility, because the victim is so wired in the ego mind, and it loves that. It loves it. And the idea that you got a little what's the word? You could feel how you were happy for people, I guess, unless I'm not hearing it right. But what I've seen is this hatred, and I've seen how we don't care about our brothers. But the way the ego was in this mind, because I don't know if right mind stuff comes up first, because I never, I've seen so much darkness in my mind, but the actual story of how much hate the ego has, I've seen that intermittently throughout my whole life. But the idea of getting pleasure from someone else's pain is something I didn't see till recently, when I'm watching my mind and watching something in it that's still that part of us that believes that we are victims, that we're in a horrid world, that everybody's out to hurt us. And all of that I've seen now come up. And the one thing that I want to say is, when you start A Course in Miracles, that's just the beginning. I mean, unless something happens and you have a full awakening, a miracle like that. Otherwise, it is a process. Because to see what Lorri had discussed, and I've seen it too, the hatred, that we have, in all of us. Because that's what it is. The part of the ego that, because remember, there's a higher ego, right? Because we don't necessarily get out of the ego. I mean, if we go all the way back to God, maybe, but if we're in consciousness, we are in the domain of the ego, which is always illusory. It can't not be illusory, because let's face it, like, that's why I love Lynn is starting that book, The Age of the Heart, maybe in our groups. And I just love anything to do with wisdom, and to leave my mind open with, I don't know. Because I don't know if we go to another level. That's what The Age of the Heart is basically saying, is that, we are going to another level of consciousness. And it does seemingly look that way, right? But, perception has changed in this mind. Perception changed. And it was, for this mind, it got a little scared, right? But it was only the ego that got scared. And the thing that I see is the confusion that used to happen when I didn't know if it was ego is so obvious now. It's so obvious. When I'm in that rabbit hole of a mind, which, by the way, there's a secret love to this dream. Ken Wapnick has said this over and over, and I would say, no, I don't feel that way. But see, it's so many layers of consciousness that are in our mind, of dimensions of just saying, oh no, I'm good, but not him. I'm good, and this is basically what the ego does. But, you feel the energy. The energy in the ego is totally different. When you're in spirit consciousness, which is just being here right now, you're in freedom. You have no story and you have no point of view. What is a point of view anyway? Like, that's the thing. And when somebody like a course teacher or somebody would say, like, well, you're not, it's always been you. I would think, no, I don't see that, but I do now. I do now that everything was handpicked for this character. And it was just so obvious that somewhere in this consciousness, I knew what was going to happen, right? It's just the way the ego works. It's Keith Kavanaugh calls it a Jedi. The ego, as soon as the ego sees that you're in truth, it goes like that, and you're out, and you're like, what happened? Oh my God, I'm back in that mind again. And the thing is, the choose again, that is really the mantra. Why would you want it? Why would any of us want to be in a story when we can be in the glorious of God? And, we met Tuesday night and had a group that I just thought was beautiful about how important it is to look at our brothers and see love. Because like when we are, this is an outside picture of an inward condition. What does that mean? It means that everything's happening inside of this mind. It means my consciousness is really the most important part of the process, is to really say, at this point, where is this consciousness that Sharon is living through? One thing I have seen is that I lose thoughts very quickly, even when I'm ready. I have an idea that comes in my mind and it goes like that. But anyway, this is beautiful. I want to read this. Father, there's a vision which beholds all things as sinless. So that fear has gone, and where it was is love invited in. And love will come wherever it is asked. The vision is your gift. The eyes of Christ look on world forgiven, in his sight are all its sins forgiven. If he sees no sin in anything, he looks upon. And the truth is, if you're in the holy instant, you see that everything you're looking at is just object consciousness, made of consciousness, right? It's all this one consciousness, just as a apparently real thing, which is just false evidence appearing real. So love and fear are mutually exclusive, and that is so true. I have a friend now that's going through something with her daughter, and it's very hard for her, as I know it was hard for me when it came to my children, because one minute she's in the right mind and there's no concern, and another minute she's in the wrong mind and she's hysterical. And that is really, when we get to see that, we get to say, well, what do we want? Well, what I would say, when I was suffering is, I can't help it. I can't help it. It's my child. But, that's a question too. Is anything real here? Is Sharon real? How real do I want to make this world? That's really the ego that wants to make it real. It shows now in this, in vision, that none of this is reality. None of it. It's just God watching. And that's what we are. We are God, the watcher. And with that, I'm going to turn that over to you, Doug Fishman. Oh, Zoom is in here. Oh, I love her. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Lynn said it's not really it is only consciousness. You're right, because there's no me. Yeah. Okay, Doug, there you go. Mike, it's yours.
Okay. Yeah. So today's lesson, 313, is calling for a new perception. And I heard you say, yes, there is only God. Now that's a great perception. it's a wonderful truth. But how do I get from little me over here to there's only God? So something has to give. And what has to give is my own perception of things that I believe, lies that I tell myself, that I am a person and I have a body and I have likes and I have dislikes and I am special because I know more than others. Wow. How do you get out of that? Well, the Course says forgiveness is all you need. Karen Parenti, I don't see her in the room, but she sent me something this morning and I posted it on the board and also in the chat. It comes from Ken Wapnick, and he says that resistance to knowing that God is all there is, or the resistance to seeing things differently, which is what today's lesson is asking us to do, to have a new perception, is my belief in moi, me, my. It's my belief. It's my thoughts. It's my. Oh my. Byron Katie says the same thing. Who would you be without your story? Well, your story is all about you. So Ken says the resistance is, who would I be without my ego, my anger? Well, lesson 5. I'm never angry or upset for the reason I think. I'm upset because there's a part of me that thinks something is against me, and I have to defend it, and I am angry that I have to do that when I'm supposed to be happy, supposed to be somebody's doing something. There's no somebody. There's nothing outside of you. You're doing it to yourself, right? No, I mean, why would I do this to myself? Well, that brings up a whole new thing, which I'll talk about in a minute. So he says, my special loves. Yeah, I know certain people that I love them much more than I love others. Well, that'll do it to you every single time when you see differences. I love you, I don't love you. Well, only the ego could say that, because the Son of God sees all the same. My special hates. Oh yes, I have made sure that there is a few bad guys in my movie, so that I can look at them and say, they're for the grace of God. I'm glad I'm not them. I mean, how could they do that? I'm still talking about myself. I'm always talking about, it doesn't matter who you're talking about. You're talking about yourself. There's only one self. My body. Oh, well, as Ken Wapnick would always remind us, only an open mind can see the body, as a symbol rather than something that's real. An open mind recognizes the body as a symbol. That's what Jesus did. Jesus saw that the body was a symbol, and as the Tibetan Buddhists say, if the finger is pointing to the moon, don't look at the finger. The finger is a symbol. See where it's pointing. So Jesus recognized that the people that came and went, that prayed and blasphemed and all that none of that was real, and that it was pointing to a loving Father who loved all equally the same. So Ken Wapnick says, who would I be without my MY? So as soon as you say my this and my that, you're already the ego. The ego is very possessive and loves to hold on to things that is its, and give away that which it doesn't want to something that it doesn't like. So what I wanted to share in relationship to what Lorri was saying here earlier, when she was going through the thing, like why doesn't God take away all this stuff, and I'm feeling like I'm a victim, and why isn't this taken away from me? I don't want my ego. Well, for those people who have gone into the new age of the heart, it's all about being responsible. So far, it's all about being responsible. And that's exactly what the Course says. It says everything that seems to happen to you, I have asked for, and I have received exactly as I have asked. And then it goes on to say, deceive yourself no longer that you're helpless, that you're a victim, that you're powerless in face of what is done to you. Acknowledge that you have been mistaken, and all effects of your mistakes will disappear. Yeah, I am responsible. Yeah, everything that happened to me, I have asked for it. These are the lessons I came here for. And of course, the lessons can be something that triggers you. And as Dove likes to say, be grateful for your triggers, because they reveal your mistaken beliefs, the lies that you have told yourself. And with that, I'll turn this mic back on over to you, Lorri. Love you.
Thanks, Dove. I really appreciate what you're talking about with the my. Where would I be without my, as Ken Wapnick said. I remember watching a Muji video where he talked about somebody whose brother had died. And he led them through a process saying, if it weren't your brother, if you didn't say my brother died, and you just said somebody appeared to die, the body appeared to go, would it affect you as much? And of course, the answer was no. When we put the my in front of it, we have this ego attachment. And that's something I've been working on with my grandchildren, recognizing that when I think they are mine, and when I think that they're my grandkids, that I want them to be okay, and I want to make sure they don't get sick and everything, that I start getting squirrely in my mind, right? In the ego mind. And so as those thoughts come up, I just look at them and say, oh, those are ego thoughts, just release them. And they all happen to be sick. There's 3 of them. They're all sick today. And so I'm going over to watch them. And just even in that, thinking of, oh, I got to go over and watch my grandkids because they're sick and stuff. It's just, this morning, it had a detachment to it. Almost like, no, this is just what this day is bringing. It has nothing to do with my grandkids or my grandkids are sick. It was just, this is what's arising to be done, with no sense of attachment to it. I noticed that this morning, and it was pretty cool. Getting back to Ken's commentary on lesson 313, now let a new perception come to me. He says, love and fear are mutually exclusive and cannot be present simultaneously. The same is true of forgiveness and judgment. Asking Jesus for help means looking through his forgiving eyes at love's reflection. And in that vision, we are forgiven and healed, and the world along with us. I've heard people say, oh no, I can feel love and fear at the same time. And I've experienced that as well. It feels like you're feeling both at the same time. But what the Course tells us is that we are shifting so rapidly between the ego mind and the right mind that we don't even notice it. In lesson 136, sickness is a defense against the truth, it says that sickness is a decision, and it's a conscious decision, but it is made so rapidly we don't even notice it. And that was a total game changer for me. Having been trained in the field of psychology, where we talk about the power of the subconscious and that we don't even know it. Well, that's true. We aren't aware of it. It's subconscious, below conscious level. And so we don't notice it, and we often blame things on our subconscious. Well, that was my subconscious coming up and I couldn't help it. Like Sharon was saying, I couldn't help it. And when we catch ourselves saying things like that, I can't help it, you can be sure that you're in the ego thought system. And when you pray this prayer, now let a new perception come to me, it will be shown to you how you can choose again. You can choose again. And it's that moment of taking 100% responsibility that really shifts everything. Because the Course is all about saying, you've done this to yourself, but God would never abandon you and never give you a way out. And the way out is choosing again. So often, Course students will say, but I've chosen again 1,000,000 times. It's not happening. It's not happening. And that's a toughie. So we have to be gentle with ourselves, because even saying, I've chosen again 1,000 times is an ego thought. So the ego always is like a spider web that's tangling us tighter. So when we get all frustrated and say, damn it, I am doing these lessons. Damn it, I am doing everything it's asked of me. Don't tell me I'm not doing this. I'm not trying to be a victim and I don't know my way out. Well, I think those of us who have been in the Course long enough can relate to that. We've all been at these places where we're just, as the proverbial throwing the book across the room, or one of my girlfriends, she actually put a knife through the book. And I can't remember, I think she said it came up to this certain particular page that was so crucial. Anyway, ripping the pages out and stuffing it down the toilet or whatever. We've all done that. And then we get to this place and we see this pocket. There was like, there it is. There's that pocket or that little piece that we have not surrendered, that we still want to hang on to. So Gloria, you're saying you love that. The ego mind must be surrendered to the Christ mind. Yes. And the thing is, and thanks for putting that up there, Gloria, because the ego mind itself cannot surrender. It can't surrender. So that's one of the things that I was texting with a friend of mine, because he balks at the idea of surrender and he's getting a lot more comfortable with it. And we were texting back and forth, and it's the ego itself cannot surrender, because the ego was made to fight against God. That's what it's all about. But what we do is we surrender we as the decision maker or as the Holy Son of God, surrender the whole ego mind itself to God. So we're surrendering it from a different place. So the part of us that's saying, I am surrendering, damn it, I am. Well, that's the ego saying it's surrendering when it's really not. And we don't have to heap judgment and blame on top of that. We just have to have compassion and say, oh yeah, that's what the ego does. Just notice it and love it. And working with my grandbabies, I should say, the grandbabies, I'll pick them up and they're just screaming and crying and all that. And I just pick them up and pat them on the back and say, I know, it's so hard to think you're a human, because it is. So I'm turning this over to Sharon.
Okay. What do I have here? Oh, somebody, ego is murderous, not suicidal. It wants me dead, but not itself. That's what Lynn just put on there. Hi, Gloria, and hi, sweetie. And did Zuma leave? No, she didn't leave. Okay. The confusion in his brain is the real problem. Anyway. If you want this vision, now the thing about vision is, once vision is really significantly takes hold, you realize that this is a total dream. And the only thing that this mind has is an addiction to Sharon. And I see that too. I see the hatred. I see the enjoyment that the ego gets out of other people's misery. I see all that now. And why would I want it? The ego will also remark how everybody looks. That person has this and that person has that. And he's too fat, she's too thin, he has no teeth. All of that is all ego. And sometimes, like, I would hear the ego, and when I'm, pretty much talking to somebody, and the amount of the way the ego would judge, it's so obvious to me that we're not the ego. Because if you can watch it, if you can watch the ego, how can you be it? These consistent meetings that we have been very helpful, because it keeps the mind, for this mind, to just be in a steady course, slowly walking each other home and loving each other all the way through. So, it used to be a bother to me when people would say the ego is murderous, because that's the ego. I mean, I was going to say, I'll hand the mic over to you, Zuma, too, because Zuma is an amazing, amazing spiritual teacher. When I listen to her, I just get like, it lands everywhere. It's just like, yes, I'm in God. Anyway, so now let a new perception come to me. That's just a prayer. But Choose Again does that. We have the tools, and the patience for God's teachers is that it takes time to mature. And the maturity is happening for this group. It just is. And it's exciting, because nobody wants this world. I mean, I get phone calls. Did you see what's happening in Gaza? All the stuff about the war. I haven't watched it at all. That was my guidance. Why in the world would I want to watch it? When I'm watching it, the guilt is really what makes people watch it. Like, I know my youngest sister said, well, you have to watch it. You're Jewish. No, you don't. You don't have to watch something that's just these figures, and it's so horrible. It is horrible. I mean, let's face it, we are still in a body, and it hurts when we get hurt. So when we see another being seemingly out there getting hurt, of course you're going to have a reaction. So my guidance was just let it go. You can't. The only thing, the way to heal the world is to get peace all the time within you. Because I'm not in a world, I'm in the mind, right, of God. And when one of us clears out all our cobwebs, that goes to all of us, because it's really one awakening. Yes, there was an error here. We have an error in our mind, and the special feelings we have for that error has to be let go, but it gets let go gradually, because you can't get rid of a thing that doesn't exist. That's really the whole point. You can't say, oh, I just want to transcend this thing. It's not even there. And that's why some of the teachers that I have listened over the years basically will say, what does it have to do with me when something happens? Now, I do say my boys, my children, and that's just the character talking, right? Because every one of us is still in God. None of us, this is all, on my walk this morning, I was, thoughts were coming up, and I was saying to myself, of course, I'm not here. I'll be 69 in January, and I'm not really here 69 years. It's an optical illusion. So whatever I think can never be true. So I don't know, I'm never here. Why would I be here 60-something years when I'm not here at all? When this is an echo of a mistaken belief, right? So Jesus's concept of saving the world cannot be understood from the body's perspective, but only from outside the dream, where we realize God has one son. And that is the truth. Like when we, what I saw a lot of times is, oh, she's waking up, but I'm not. That's a problem right there. Because there's only one waking up, too. So there's nothing special about awakening, right? It's happening through us. It's not happening by anyone. It's all God. And all we're doing, as Ram Dass would say, is walking each other home. But there's nothing more powerful than the love of what we are. So when we see a brother, we want to remember, I and my brother are one. Because immediately the ego has something to say usually about what's outside of you, and there's nothing outside of you. So when you start to train the mind to only see love and to commit to that love, which is total joy, you release all of the stories that put you in hell. And when you're in hell, you can't see heaven. That's for sure. I mean, I do want to ask you, Lorri, if about where in the course it says, what you were explaining, because I don't remember seeing that. I think when we read A Course in Miracles, the eyes will skim past things, and then you read it again and it goes deeper. And then you read it another layer and it goes deeper. So yeah, there's a thing that Lorri was stating basically that our mind shifts so quickly. And I could never understand that. But that's the whole point here. I do not know how people wake up. I do not know how I got here. I do not know anything. In fact, everything I believed was a lie. So it's a do-over every morning, every afternoon, every evening. But what is it? It's just who we are. We are love, unconditional love. You couldn't have a more magnificent gift from God than that. Over to you, Doug.
Okay. I was listening to what you were sharing about the Middle East, and I think I'm going to take a look at the Middle East as, it seems to be what people are talking about and thinking about. And I'm going to pick up where Ken Wapnick kind of left us. He says, who would you be without your my? So, the idea that you have a religion, my religion is Jewish, so I should be, notice the word should, interested in what's going on with this country called Israel, and are they right or are they wrong? And I noticed myself, I'm talking about myself now, in my own way, I feel that they should listen about pausing and giving some time for a few days of not attacking, but just being. I happened to be watching the Republican debate last night, and I was totally amazed. All 5 of the Republican candidates for president said, no, they should definitely attack and wipe out all these people. And they hardly touched on the fact that, there was 10,000 innocent citizens of Palestine. 4,000 of them are children. They hardly touched on it. They just wanted to say that Israel was right, period, and they should do everything that, I see, I'm taking a look at lesson 313, which is today's lesson. I posted it both in the room and on the chat here. It says, now let a new perception come to me. And I'm going to read it exactly as I posted it on Facebook. Father, there is a vision which beholds all things as sinless. So he's talking about a vision, and you can be sure that the ego is talking about division. These people are divided. And as the Bible said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. And that's what we're doing. We're beating ourselves up. That's the secret of salvation, is I'm doing this to myself. So that the fear is gone. The fear that we look at when we watch the boob tube and see what's going on, that can happen to me because I'm a body too. I mean, what would happen if everyone said, let's kill the Jews? That's me, right? You got to laugh. No, really, you simply got to laugh. First of all, if you're doing this course, And I say there's certain guardrails in this course. You can put it under the rules for decision. One of the rules is there is no death, and I'm not a body. But if you see yourself as a body and you think death is real, then of course you're going to live in fear. But it says, now let a new perception come to me. You know, that there's a vision that beholds all things as sinless. Sinless means innocence. It means there's no guilt. It's the guilt that demands the punishment, and the punishment of sin and guilt is death. And if I live under that belief system, well, of course, I'm going to root for one over the other, just like we root for one baseball team over another, one football team over another. Well, you know, they're my home team. Of course, I'm going to root for them. I'm not going to root for somebody 3,000 miles away. I'm going to root for my own home team, right? So that's a world of division, separation. So true vision sees all the same equally. Oh, that's a good word, equally. And peace is only possible when I see others as equal. If I see differences, different religions, they live in different places than I do, really? Anything to do with differences is the ego telling me there's something to be afraid of because something is different than me. No. In oneness, there's nothing outside of the one mind and the peace and the love of God. Nothing. What is it that I'm afraid of? What is it that I don't want to see? There's nothing there. You got to laugh, simply. You got to laugh. Back over to you, Lorri.
Thanks, Dove. Sharon, you asked where in the course was that thing about the unconscious being rapid and actually not being unconscious. And it's in lesson 136. It's paragraph 3. Defenses are not unintentional, nor are they made without awareness. They are secret magic wands you wave when truth appears to threaten what you would believe. They seem to be unconscious, but because of the rapidity with which you choose to use them. In that second, even less, in which the choice is made, you recognize exactly what you would attempt to do, and then proceed to think that it is done. Who but yourself evaluates a threat, decides escape is necessary, and sets up a series of defenses to reduce the threat that has been judged as real? All this cannot be done unconsciously. But afterward, your plan requires that you must forget you made it. So it seems to be external to your own intent, a happening beyond your state of mind, an outcome with a real effect on you instead of one affected by yourself. It is this quick forgetting of the part you play in making your quote unquote reality that makes defenses seem to be beyond your own control. So like I said, that was a game changer for me when everything I've been trained in that, the subconscious was real and the subconscious runs everything. Well, when the course says that's the ego mind, and yes, it appears to run everything, but you actually run it. Wow, that gives us total control and takes us out of the victim role completely. Getting back to Ken's commentary on lesson 313, now let a new perception come to me. It says, now let his true perception come to me that I may waken from the dream of sin and look within upon my sinlessness, which you have kept completely undefiled upon the altar to your holy Son, the self with which I would identify. That's paragraph 1, line 6. Ken says, the holy altar is our minds. Our inherent sinlessness has been kept pure and undefiled through the Holy Spirit's presence, reminding us that reality is unchanged, our insane beliefs to the contrary. So when we can look at what's going on in the Middle East and say, reality remains unchanged, It doesn't matter how long or how hard or how bad the Palestinians and the Israelis fight, reality remains unchanged. And that's a thought that we need to keep. And back in the workbook lesson, paragraph 2, lines 5 to 6 say, we save the world when we have joined, for in our vision it becomes as holy as the light in us. The best thing we can do for the Middle East conflict, or the appearance of Middle East conflict, is to join in mind with our brothers, and to know that reality remains unchanged. In the workbook, when they do the questions on what is a miracle, it says, a miracle looks on devastation and reminds the mind that what it is seeing is not true, or what it is seeing is false. That is so helpful, because we're not helping anyone when we join with the suffering and join with the conflict. Yeah. And Gloria, you're saying the changeless dwelling place. And Zulma, you wrote, we save the world when we have joined. We do. We save the world when we have joined. And the other day I had a situation with my friend, and something happened with one of his family members. And I was so angry what that person did to him. And then I just found myself getting totally charged up, and so charged up that I even woke up in the middle of the night when I went to the bathroom, and then couldn't go back to sleep because I was still upset about it. And then realizing, I'm not helping this situation at all. I'm not helping him by being angry for him, by making him a victim, and by making the other person a victimizer. And the ego wanted me to say, well, you just care about him, and you just want to defend him. And it's like, wait a minute, wait. That would have really gotten me a lot of juice in the old days. And it started with this one, so much that I couldn't fall back asleep. But then it was like, no, stop. This is not helping. That's just feeding the ego. That's just seeing him as a body, as someone who can be victimized. That's not seeing the Christ in him. You've made a vow to see only the Christ in him. And so I started applying, I choose the joy of God instead of pain. I choose truth instead of illusion. I choose to forgive this seeming appearance. And I became peaceful, and I let it go. And it was this struggle. The ego really wanted to hang on to that drama and just get all up in arms. And so it was like, wow, this is great. This is really great. And a couple times I wanted to tell other people what happened. Can you believe what that person did? Oh my God. And again, being able to see the part of me, or I should say the part of the ego that I was ascribing to, that really wanted that. It's like, oh, here's a drama. Here's something to be upset about. Here's something to prove how much I love this person and want to go to his defense, which is nuts. That's not love. That's fear. And so with that, I'm going to turn that over to Sharon.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Lorri.
That was beautiful, Lorri. The last judgment, right? They're talking a lot about that in the world of form, saying that, the Armageddon is coming now because look what's happening to this, and this. And, again, it's a dream. Bring yourself down back to earth. This is a dream. What does a dream at night mean? Nothing. What does a dream during the day mean? Nothing. So the last judgment in text chapter 2 says the last judgment is, and why am I saying that? Because we're all at the last judgment. We realize there's only one son, right? So the last judgment is generally thought of as a procedure undertaken by God. Actually, it will be undertaken by my brothers with my help. It is a final healing. The last judgment might be called a process of right evaluation. It simply means that everyone will finally come to understand what is worthy and what is not. The first step toward freedom involves a sorting out of the false from the true. This is the process of separation in the constructive sense and reflects the true meaning of the apocalypse. So, Ken was speaking about this here, and he says, in this summary, however, Jesus uses the term last judgment in another way as well, speaking of the last or final judgment of God. This has nothing to do with correction or undoing. Indeed, it has nothing to do with the world at all. God's judgment simply expresses the truth that is beyond the dream. God loves us, we love him, and we are one in that love. Recall the previously cited opening of the Song of Prayer, which beautifully expresses the shared love in the image of heaven's song of gratitude. It's funny because Ken Wapnick, he probably knew the chorus like he knew that his name was Ken Wapnick, just like Dove. Dove can tell you where is in the chorus, and the thing is, these little lines, like what you read, Lorri, they're just so beautiful. Taking your time and looking at what Jesus is telling us, giving us that map to get home, giving us the opportunity to just know that there's only one of us here. There never was anything to be afraid of, right? And it's all, so Ken goes on, this when he was talking about the Song of Prayer, the song, the Son sings to the Father, who returns the thanks it offers him unto the Son. Endless the harmony of endless two, the joyous concord of the love I give forever to each other. The love they share is what all prayer will be throughout eternity, which time is done. For such it was before time seemed to be. When you really see that you're not this body, okay, and you're just everything and nothing, you're in freedom, and there's nothing more to say. It's funny because I haven't been even interested in like the Republican or the Democrats or any of that. I feel at this point that all I'm doing, I'm sure when it gets closer to the election, I'll watch stuff, but I'm going to watch my mind to see, because if I see something out there that I don't like, I got to look at it in me. Because if I see the Christ in everything always, I might have a preference on who I want to run the country, but that's just Sharon's preference. In the end, what do I know? What do I know as a human? Nothing. Everything has been downloaded by the ego mind. So to say that, I have a preference, even that's silly, because my preferences are just points of views, and that's just keeping you back. There's nothing wrong with watching things either. If you can watch the Republican, what Doug was saying, he watched it last night and not have any kind of reaction and just chuckle and laugh, then that's fine. Obviously, there's not an interest here right now, but there certainly was in the last election. And the thing is, that's all about distraction. That's the ego's point. Do I want to distract myself more? The ego will say, well, you're not going to come back here. You're never going to be Sharon again. The ego will say a lot of things. You know how important that is. And that's just conditioned mind. So we have to bring ourselves back and realize that we are always at peace and that we can watch the movie. Just watch it. Don't invest in it, and love everyone in the movie. Both sides, whoever, because all they are is a reflection of our mind. If we are a hologram, then everybody is us. So when somebody acts like a child in politics, so what? That's just an act. That's not who they are. So you can enjoy it as long as you know it's just an act. But when you think it's your reality and you want it your way, you're stuck. You're really stuck. And what I've noticed is that everything seems to fall away naturally. It's an organic process. And it can't be something that any of us have designed personally. We all designed it. We're in this together. We're all one. And over to you, Dub. And with that, it's funny. Look, Lauren just wrote, amen, Dub. Do I want to be right or do I want eternal life? That's a great thing to sit with. Because that's what we are. We are eternal life. Ego's never going to want us to go and change this, because the ego on some level knows this isn't true. You know, it has it's something in it that knows, but it's there sometimes just as a tool. Use it as a tool. But in every moment, cherish that moment, because that's all we are, that moment. And thanks, Lorri and Doug. Over to you, Doug.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Sharon. Yeah, you asked the question, what do I know? I don't know anything. I mean, that's pretty much what Jesus is saying. I mean, your children actually use the word infant. It's the idea that, you know, lately we've been talking, thanks to Lynn, we're talking about Helen Keller. And I say they were all Helen Keller, because, you know, Helen Keller didn't know anything because she had no way of putting things together until Annie Sullivan came along and patiently taught her, you know, what things are, so she can begin to make an idea of what the world is about. You mentioned Ken Wapnick. He knew this stuff like he knew himself. There's a part of me that thinks that the Jesus of the Course, which is the voice that spoke to Helen, actually came into body form in the form of Ken Wapnick. You know, in my mind, I mean, where would the Course be if it was just given to Helen and Bill? I don't know. Maybe it's a crazy question, but you know, at least for me, I see that he embodied the Course. He embodied the Course because he was the Course. I mean, you know, he took the Course to levels so deep that even Jesus, in speaking to Helen, did not take it to those same levels. So the Course needed someone like Ken Wapnick to actually speak about it. I put in the room, yeah, the idea that one of the guardrails of the Course, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Choose one. You can't have both. And I also think I put in the, or at least I put in the chat, the one question you want to ask yourself every single day, and I do, what belief, what lie am I right about that I don't want to be right about anymore? And it's your willingness to really ask that question with the intention of letting go of what is not real. I mean, Jesus tells you at the very beginning, I can sum up this entire Course for you in a few lines. You know, if you want to keep reading 1,300 pages, go ahead. He says, what's real, you know, can't be threatened. It's all there is. And it's eternal. It's forever. What's unreal, what your mind is thinking about, doesn't even exist. But you think it does, and you think you're right about it, that those people shouldn't be doing that, and if only this, and if only that, and if there's an if in the way you look at life, you can be sure that the ego is in control of your life. There's no ifs in God. You know, if God is the center of your life, if God is the center, you are peaceful and happy now. Shalom, peace, nothing missing, nothing broken. Everything is perfect, exactly the way it is. What can you not accept if you but knew that everything that seems to happen, everything, all events, past, present, and even to come, is gently planned for you. Really? Yeah, wow. By one whose only purpose is your good. Yes, you got to laugh. Simply, you got to laugh. Thank you, Lorri and Sharon and Lynn and everyone here at ACIM Gather. Turning the mic back on over to you, Lynn. Hi, Regis.
Thank you guys so much. Beautiful